Most respected Thai, dear Sangha, today is the 20th of May in the year 2018, and we are in the new hamlet in the Loving Kindness Adornment Temple on our day of mindfulness. And first of all, we are going to come back to our breathing, if we are not already with our breathing, and find our true home in the present moment as we listen to the 3 sounds of the bell. Most respected Thai, dear Sangha, today is a very beautiful day, and we know that the beauty is also inside of us, and we have the capacity to make the day more beautiful or less beautiful according to how our mind is. And this morning we chant about the 3 jewels, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. And maybe about 20 years ago or less, when people received the 5 mindfulness trainings in Plum village, they also received the 3 refuges, the refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. But many of us who receive the 5 mindfulness trainings have something that is called double belonging. Double belonging means that you're not just a Buddhist, you're something else as well. Maybe you're a Christian or a Jew or a Muslim, so you can have a double belonging. Some people even told me they have triple belonging. So that is why we didn't give the 3 refuges anymore. Because some people who want to receive the 5 mindfulness trainings, they want also to continue to practice with their church or with their synagogue. And they want to say, I take refuge in God, or I take refuge in Jesus Christ. But if everybody say at the same time they're taking refuge in something different, then it doesn't sound so beautiful. So we decided just to leave it up to the person themselves to take refuge in their heart. Tâm niệm. And we can do that every day, take refuge. Actually, when we practice the 5 mindfulness trainings, we are already taking refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. We don't have to call the Buddha by the name Buddha, someone who we believe lived 2,500 or 600 years ago in India. Today when we chanted, we said we take refuge in the Buddha ever present. So that means the Buddha is available here and now in our own time. And where can we find the Buddha? Well, first of all, we have to come back to the island of self and find the Buddha in that island. And that does not mean to say that we are a Buddhist. We can be a Christian and do that. Because what does Buddha mean? Buddha means woken up, awakened, the awakened one. So it does not have to be someone who practices Buddhism in the official sense. But someone can wake up to the reality of the present moment. And that is what we call the seed of Buddha. Sometimes we call the Buddha nature. And if you translate Buddha into English, you would say the awakened nature. It means there is that natural, inborn ability to be awake in any moment, ever present. In any moment we can touch that natural ability in us. But sometimes it is quite deep and quite hidden, and we need to have ways in order to bring it up more into the present moment, bring it up more in our daily life. And those of you who have come here to Plum Village, you are together with the Sangha, you are finding ways to bring up the Buddha nature, the seed of awakening in your daily life. Not long before the Buddha, maybe 3 months before the Buddha died, officially we should not say the Buddha died. We should use a very complicated expression and say the Buddha went into mahaparanirvana. But in fact it's simpler if we say the Buddha died. And so 3 months before that, the Buddha was teaching very carefully all his disciples, monks, nuns, laymen and laywomen, about how to take refuge in yourself. The Buddha said, "This is what I am practicing." At that time, the Buddha's physical body was not in very good health. And about that time also, the Buddha had thought that it's not much longer that the Buddha can continue in this physical body. So the practice the Buddha was doing was to come back to the refuge in oneself. And the Buddha wanted all his disciples to do the same. Because if they took refuge in some physical form outside of them, and then the Buddha's body is cremated, they will lose their place of refuge. So they need to learn to find the Buddha in themselves in order to be able to take refuge in themselves, in the Buddha in themselves. So the Buddha, when teaching that, he used an image, and that image is the island of oneself. Some of you who have known about Buddhism for a long time might say, that is funny. Why is the Buddha talking about a self? We usually hear that the Buddha taught no self. But actually very often the Buddha used the word self. In a sutra that was taught very early on by the Buddha, in the what is called the Sutta Nipata, the Buddha taught the monks, he said that use yourself to protect yourself. Use yourself to protect yourself. Use self to protect yourself. In another sutra, the Buddha said, if you like, you can use the word self. But when you use the word self, you should understand that the self is made up of everything that is not the self. You should understand that the self is always changing at every moment. It is impermanent. It is like a river. It's never the same from one moment to the next. The water is always different water. So when you come back to the island of yourself, you will find that it's not something solid, always the same. You will find that it is something that is changing in every instant. The masters of Buddhism have taught that there are different kinds of condition that make it possible for something to manifest. It's like the flower, if it did not have the seed, if it did not have the rain and the sunshine, it couldn't manifest as a flower. So everything needs condition to manifest. And if the rain fell one day, and then for 6 days there was no rain, then maybe the seed would not be able to turn into a rose bush and then into a flower. So there's another condition. It's called the condition of uninterruptedness. Anantara in Sanskrit. Dang Vo Yan Ying in Sino-Vietnamese. So we need that condition of uninterruptedness. So if you find the seed of the Buddha in you, what are the times when you may find it and be in touch with it? One important time is when you hear the sound of the bell. That is always an opportunity for you to touch the awakened nature in yourself. One of the things I am most grateful to my teacher for is giving us the sound of the bell. And I recognize that the sound of the bell is not very often. Before, we used to tell the bell master in the beginning to invite the bell outside every hour of the day, The bell master had to go out to the bell outside and invite it. But then we recognize that we have the telephone, and the telephone can replace the bell. So we start to use telephone meditation as well, and the bell master has less work to do, does not have to go out every hour. And then even something more, we started in the last 10 years to have all kinds of electronic equipment that can provide for everyone their own bell of mindfulness. And with the computer, we can download a bell of mindfulness. Or we can have come up on our screen, breathe, you are alive. Sometimes we sit at our computer and we forget that we have a body. The body and the mind are really not two separate things. But if in our conscious mind we forget that we have a body, then we can do things which are not very good for our body, like sit at the computer for too long in a not very good position, and then we find we have all kinds of aches and pains after that. So we need some message to come up on our computer to remind us, you have a body. And when you remember, you come back and you feel your body as it is now. And if you aches and pains in your body, you will recognize they are there. Sometimes when people come to learn sitting meditation, and we show them how to sit for half an hour in sitting meditation, they say, oh, it's so uncomfortable. My foot is numb, I have pain in my back. And then we say, when you sit and watch the television, do you feel uncomfortable? They say, no, I can watch the television for 2 or 3 hours and I don't feel any pain. So that is because your mind is so engaged in the television that you have forgotten you have a body. But when you do sitting meditation, your mind is really with your body. So we need to come back to the refuge in ourselves, which in a way means coming back to our body. That is the first thing we need to do. And coming back to our body, we can begin to heal our body. We, all of us, have symptoms of unwellness in our body. Some people more than others. And those symptoms can show themselves to us at any moment of our daily life. So if we will practicing mindfulness of our body, we will recognize when a symptom of unwellness comes up, and we can take care of it. And at the same time, everybody has the capacity to heal. If you cut your finger, you don't have to do very much. You just have to make sure that it's clean and you don't cut it again, and then it will, of itself, in a few days, it will heal. And then you will say, what a miracle. My body can heal itself. And you feel a lot of trust in your body, a lot of wonder and awe for your body that can heal itself like that. So everyone has the capacity to heal themselves. But the thing is, we don't have trust in it. And we don't allow our body to heal itself. We think, oh, I have to take this medicine, oh, I have to to go to this doctor and I have to go to that doctor. And every doctor has a different idea how you can heal. But there are ways of allowing your body to heal. And as we said, the first is to come back to yourself. It's not to run around looking for the medicine you need. It's not to run around looking for the doctor you need. But to come back and recognize that there is unwellness arising. And then also to recognize there is a capacity to heal. And how to give ourselves trust and confidence in the capacity to heal. This morning when we chanted Une fleur de lotus, I don't know, Une fleur de lotus, de la vision profonde, thank you. De la vision profonde. We chanted même sa pensée incurable, yeah. Even those that are thought of to be incurable. So the Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara is able to cure sickness. Even that is thought of as incurable. So first of all, we also said that body and mind are not two separate things. They can never be separated. So unwellness of our body is also unwellness of our mind at the same time. Body and mind are like if you have a piece of paper. You have a piece of paper, you see there's the recto and the verso. And body and mind are like that. You could not remove one side from the other side. Wherever one side goes, the other side also goes. So our body and mind are like that. Wherever one goes, the other goes. They are part of each other. So healing takes place both in body and in mind together. And sometimes we can start from the point of view of the body, and that will help the mind immediately. And sometimes we can start from the point of view of the mind, and that will help the body immediately. So as I said, we need to have confidence. We need to have trust that we can heal. We can heal both our mind and our body. And coming to the Sangha is the best way to learn how to take care of your body. Sometimes when I don't feel well, I practice walking meditation. And I remind myself of the capacity of my body to heal. As you walk, you are aware of the contact between your feet and the earth. This is important because the earth under your feet is your mother. You are a child of the earth. All of us are children of the earth. The cattle, the dog, they are also the children of the earth. The trees are the children of the earth. So you connect with your mother. Not only your mother, but the mother of the Buddhas, the mother of Jesus Christ. because the Son of Man chose the earth to practice. The Buddha also chose the earth to practice. So coming back like that to the earth is already beginning to heal. The earth has the capacity to heal. She has healed herself many times. When hit by a meteorite, she still managed to heal herself. The Ice Age still managed to heal herself. So we can receive the healing energy from the earth as we walk. And the first thing we need to be aware of is that our feet are in contact with the earth. And as you walk, you can use for yourself the word healing. 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 Nourishing. Nourishing. Because in order to heal, your body also needs its nourishment. So one of our ancestral teachers, Master Lin Chi, said that Địa hành thành thông. The miracle, walking on the earth, is the miracle. Sometimes when you practice mindful walking, nourishing, healing, you recognize it's a miracle. To be able to walk is a miracle. You don't have to walk on the water or walk through fire for it to be a miracle. If you walk in mindfulness, of course if you're running into the future as you walk, it's not a miracle. But if you walk in mindfulness, it is a miracle. Healing. Healing. Nourishing. Nourishing. And at that point, both your body and your mind are working together to allow the healing to take place. You don't have to do very much. It is more a matter of allowing it to happen. Because at that time, you are actually in the present moment. If you ask yourself, when is the time to heal? When shall I be healed? The answer is not in the future. The answer has to be now. Now or never. So the healing arises in the present moment. And we need this cause we talked about of uninterrupted. So the practice needs to be continuous. As much as possible, as often as possible. If you are well in the present moment. If you are unwell in the present moment. And you take care in the present moment. So the next time that you don't feel very well, the best thing is to come back to your breathing and take care of yourself in the present moment. If you do discover that you need to find the help of a doctor or a health practitioner, it's fine. But don't entrust yourself to them completely. Have confidence that you are really doing the healing, and that they are just like opening the door for you to walk through. But you need to walk. You need to walk through the door. And you need to uninterruptedly continue the practice of healing when you go home, and not just feel that when you are with your doctor or doing what your doctor tells you that you are being healed. So one time, my elder sister Chân, Sister Chân, is the true emptiness. She was giving a consultation to someone who was in ill health, and she suggested to that person that when they practice touching the earth, they should practice touching the earth to be in touch with ancestors of theirs who had been very healthy. So all of us, if we think somewhere in our genetic ancestry, we have the ancestors who had health. And those genes are also available in us. So with our meditation, we can visualize a great uncle or someone in our ancestry who was in very good health. And we know that we share certain genes with that person. And so we want to water the seeds of the genes of our ancestor who was in health, to have confidence that we also have the capacity to be in good health. And I don't know yet, while you've been here, if you've been introduced to touching the earth yet. You have done the practice to touching the earth. Maybe at the end of the sitting meditation in the morning, you touch the earth 3 times, which means to prostrate. Meditate in the prostrate position. When I was first introduced to Buddhism, I did not like prostration at all. I try every time to avoid, if I can, to have to prostrate. But it's not easy. One time I was staying with the nuns in India, in Himachal Pradesh, and we heard we're having a visit from the Dalai Lama. So everyone very happy, and they will be able to receive a blessing from the Dalai Lama. They will be able to receive the teaching from the Dalai Lama. So in order to receive the blessing, the Dalai Lama is sitting on a high throne. Everyone come in front of the Dalai Lama, and he puts his hand on their head to give the blessing. But before he does that, when you come in front, you have to touch the earth, you have to prostrate in front of the Dalai Lama. And there was a long queue of nuns, and I was right at the end of the queue, because I wasn't a nun. So all the time I was thinking, how can I avoid prostrating before the Dalai Lama? I don't want to do it. But I couldn't think of any way. So then all the time I was thinking, but then it's suddenly my turn. So I had to come, and then I thought, okay, I have to prostrate. But Dalai Lama, he bent down, he took hold of my hand very strong. He shook my hand like that. I didn't have to prostrate. But I didn't get a blessing on my head either. I got a handshake. So the awakened ones, they have insight about what's going on within the mind of the unawakened one. But later on, I went to a retreat with Thai in England, and Thai told us the meaning of touching the earth. So after that, that was my favorite practice. Because when you touch the earth, it's a way of letting go completely your idea of being a separate self. So before we talk about self, we said, you can have a self, but it's made up of everything that's not yourself. Does that sound like a contradiction? It's difficult to understand. You try touching the earth and you will understand. It's difficult to put into words. So, the one who bows and the one who is bowed to are both by nature empty. Therefore, the communication between us cannot be described. It's wonderful beyond description. So when you touch the earth like that, you see your true nature of not being a separate self. You see how wonderfully connected you are to everything that is. And that includes your ancestors. It includes your great uncle who was had good health, whose genes you share. So when you touch the earth and you're in touch with your ancestors, you can feel their energy within you. You are not two different things. The one who bows and the one who is bowed to are not two different things. So we have confidence in the awakened nature within us. And that would be the up-to-date way of saying, I take refuge in the Buddha. In our daily life, to be able to touch the awakened nature within us is like taking refuge in the Buddha. So taking refuge is a practice. It's not something you do at a special ceremony, and then you don't have to do it again for another week when you have the ceremony again. It's something that you can do at any moment. Take refuge in your own awakened nature. Have faith in it. Once you've found it, you experience, yes, it's there. Maybe when you are listening to the sound of the bell, you will suddenly see, my mind has the capacity to stop all its usual inclination. It can stop it. All its usual unnecessary thinking, it can stop. And it can touch some other dimension. And so you know at that time that the awakened nature is there within you. And you have confidence that it's there within you. So another time when you might recognize your own awakened nature is when you are touching the earth. I used to think that touching the earth was bowing down to something better than me, that was outside of me. Maybe in order to ask for something, maybe in order to be able to feel comforted by the fact there is someone better than me. But in Buddhism we don't make that kind of comparison, who is better and who is not better. We don't make that kind of comparison between ta and tu, between what is the power of something outside and what is the power of inside. We don't take refuge in a power that is outside of us. If anything, we allow the power outside of us to show us the power that is inside of us. And Thai always says that a good teacher is someone who can show us our own teacher within us. A good teacher is not someone who wants people to take refuge in him or in her in order to feel that, oh, I'm a good teacher. A good teacher is someone who can show the disciple, the teacher within themselves. And I see that throughout the time that I was in touch with Thai, with the teachings of Thai. That was all Thai was trying to do, to show me the teacher within myself. So taking refuge, come back and take refuge in the island of yourself. Very often we look a lot at people who are around us. We want to see what people around us are doing, how people around us are looking at us. And then we get caught up in what is happening around us. And we forget to be aware of what is happening within us, the island of ourself. So when we talk about coming back to the island of yourself, we mean don't bother what is happening around. Don't get caught up in what is happening around, but come back and take care of yourself. One time a young person told me that she went on holiday to Italy with her parents, and they went to the market, and she was lost in the crowd, and she couldn't find her parents. And so then she decided, okay, I will just stand here and breathe. So she came back to herself and followed her breathing. And then it was very easy for her to find her parents. So if we panic and we get lost in our strong emotion of panic, and our mind is not clear, and we cannot realize the thing that we want to realize. But if we are able to come back to ourselves and breathe and stop all the thinking, then we will know what to do and what not to do. So this is the instruction that we give people when we give orientation in Plum Village. On the first day, people very often say, oh, I don't know what I'm meant to be doing. Should I be joining my palms and bowing? Or what should I be doing now? Should I be in the dining room? And we say, only two things you need to do. Breathe mindfully and walk mindfully. And all the rest is not important. So if ever you have the question, what should I be doing now? You can just say, oh, I should be breathing, or I should be walking. Everything else will fall into place. with the Sangha body. So the second refuge that we take refuge in is called the Dharma. And the Dharma we talk about as the teachings of truth, the way things are. Dharma is a Sanskrit word. Sometimes it's translated as the law, sometimes translated as the law of nature. So we say the way things are. Buddhas do not wash away people's wrongdoing with water. Buddhas do not remove suffering with their hands. Beings are liberated by the teachings of truth, the way things are. One of the most important teachings that the Buddha gave is what is called the teaching of conditioned genesis. Yuen Kai. So in the Bible, we hear about the creation of the earth, and it's called Genesis. Genesis means about being created, about coming about. So for this reason, we can also use the word Genesis for meaning arising, coming about. In Buddhism too, if we want. If somebody says to you, "Oh, according to Buddhism, how was the world created? How did it come about?" Then you answer like this: conditioned genesis. And conditioned genesis is summed up in these words. This is because that is. And if somebody asks you in Buddhism, how was the world created? You just say, this is because that is. What it means is when the conditions are favorable, something will manifest. And when the conditions are not there, that thing will no longer manifest. This is the cream of the Buddha's teaching. One day the two disciples of the Buddha, Shariputra and Moggallana, before they became disciples of the Buddha, they wanted to find the teacher. So they were good friends, and they said to each other, whoever finds the teacher first, to come and let the other one know. If Sariputra finds the teacher, let Mahamoggallana know. if Moggallana find the teacher, let Sariputra know. So they were looking for their teacher, and then one day Shariputra, he saw a monk making the alms round. And the monk was practicing mindful walking. And Shariputra thought, this monk is practicing well. Let me ask him who is his teacher. So he went up to the monk and said, Reverend Bhikshu, please can you tell me who is your teacher? And he probably said something like the Shramana Gautama or the Shakyamuni Buddha, I don't know what he said. And then the next question was, what does he teach? What does he teach? What does the Buddha teach? And he said, Ye Dhamma hetu prabhava, hetung tesham tathagata hyava, yas tesham nirodha, yas tesham nirodha, evam vadi mahashramana. They call him the mahashramana, the great shramana. So how things are conditioned, how phenomena are conditioned and arise, that is what my teacher teaches. And how things are conditioned and cease, that is what my teacher teaches. The great monk, my teacher teaches. And Shariputra said, okay, that's enough, I don't need to hear anymore. Went quickly to find Moggallana and said, I found our teacher. It's the Shramana Gautama. He only had to hear those words. How things are conditioned in order to arise. How things are conditioned in order to cease. And sometimes people ask the Buddha, Lord Buddha, what do you teach? Do you teach about what happens after we die? Whether we continue or don't continue? And the Buddha said, no, I only teach two things. Suffering and the end of suffering. You might say, oh, why didn't Ashvajit, that is the monk that Shariputra met, why didn't he say, oh, the Buddha only teaches two things, suffering and the end of suffering? Why did they tell us all about conditioned genesis? Because conditioned genesis, the understanding of conditioned genesis, is the way to put an end to suffering. So they go together. We soon have a 21-day retreat. We have to talk about this kind of thing, conditioned genesis. So this is the Dharma. It's not very difficult to sum up. This is because that is suffering and the end of suffering. Did you hear about the enlightenment of the Buddha? When the Buddha sat at the foot of the Bodhi tree and became enlightened? When you have a very deep experience, but all of us can have that deep experience, when we hear the sound of the bell, or we touch the earth, or we practice walking meditation or sitting meditation, we touch a realm, a dimension that sometimes is very difficult for us to talk about. We don't know how to put it into words. We don't know how to put it into concepts. We have a feeling of being very connected, of very liberated, free from suffering, secure in that moment. but we don't really have words to describe it. It's like if you want to tell a friend about who's never eaten a kiwi. You want to tell that friend about what a kiwi tastes like. It's very difficult to explain so that friend will exactly know what a kiwi tastes like. There's only one way for that friend to know what a kiwi tastes like, and that is to eat the kiwi. It's not to hear a long description of what it tastes like from another person. So sitting at the foot of the Bodhi tree, realizing awakening, was something the Buddha found difficult to put into words. And therefore the Buddha did not want to teach. He did not want to teach the Dharma in the beginning. He said it's too difficult to explain. But then it's said like this in the story. One of the gods, the god Brahma, he came to the Buddha. He said, look, now you are enlightened. Your duty is you have to teach. Many people are suffering, and they need your teaching not to suffer. So then the Buddha listened to Brahma, and the Buddha tried to find a way in order to put into words what the Buddha had experienced. And that is why we have the Four Noble Truths. And the first Noble Truth is the Noble Truth of suffering. Or you may say that suffering, that's not very noble. But you probably agree that it's true. And it's noble when you can face it, when you can accept it, and not run away. Because most of us, unconsciously or consciously, we run away when we hear about suffering, when we face suffering. So we have many ways of running away. And people who want us to consume because they want to sell their products, they can help us to run away. So you can go to the market and go to the supermarket and buy things, and somehow you don't feel so bad. You feel something is there to make you secure, so you don't suffer so much. Or you turn on the television and you get distracted from your suffering. Or you take some alcohol and you feel better, but you don't face your suffering. And that is why we need the First Noble Truth, so that we can be brave enough to face our suffering, not to run away, not to get in the car and drive somewhere to get away from our suffering. You know the little poem we have before we start the car. Before I start the car, I know where I am going. The car and I are one. If the car goes fast, I go fast. So before, I don't know how you do, press the button now, you don't turn the key anymore in the ignition. But before you do that, you press the button. While your finger is on the button but not being pressed, before I start the car, I know where I am going. Do I really need to go to that place? Or am I just running away from my suffering? And if we see at that point that we don't really need to go there, what we need to do is to come home to ourselves and take care of our suffering. Then we won't press the button. We'll get out of the car and we will do what needs to be done. Walking, breathing, taking care. Coming home to ourselves, coming back to the island in ourselves. One time I was interviewed by a journalist, And she said at the end, could she ask Thai a personal question? And Thai said yes. And she said, what practice can I do? And Thai said, go home and heal. And she thought that, so she bought an aeroplane ticket. She wasn't supposed to be going home. So she bought an aeroplane ticket and went back to her home country. But Thai didn't mean that. Later on, Thai had a chance to tell her he didn't mean that. What Thai meant is go home to the island of yourself in the present moment and heal and take care. And often when we haven't been in the island of a self, we haven't been in our inner home, that home that we can take with us everywhere, like our mobile telephone. We can have a mobile home in ourselves, which we take everywhere. I think mobile home has a different meaning in American. But we can take with us wherever we go, the home within. So we go back to that home. And sometimes if we've not been in that home for a long time, the garden is in a mess, there is dust everywhere. And we don't like it. We don't like our home in a mess like that. So maybe we get in the car and we drive off somewhere else. But no, when you come back to your home, the island within yourself, and you see that it's in a mess, you can smile. I've come back home and it's in a mess. But that's good, because now I can start tidying it up. And if I run away and go somewhere else, then I won't have the chance to tidy up the mess. It will get worse, and the next time it'll be more difficult for me to come back to my home. So don't drive the car anywhere. Get down. Walk mindfully, breathing in, I've arrived. Breathing out, I am home. Oh dear, my home is in a mess. Now I'm going to follow my breathing, stay with myself, and my home will begin to get tidier. My mind will begin to calm down, be more peaceful, and I can take care. So first of all, there's the suffering that is within us, but then there is the suffering that is all around us. I like going for a walk outside, but every time I walk somewhere, I always have to pass a field with cows in it. And the cows, when I look in their eyes, I see some kind of sadness. Most cows, they look sad. If you look in the eyes of a dog, the dog doesn't look sad like that. Because the dog, normally he has a much better life than the cow does. And when I think about the life of the cow, it makes me feel sad. There's suffering in the world. But if I keep feeling sad all the time I'm standing looking at the cow, I feel sad. I can't really help the cow. I want to share a little bit of deep joy with the cow. So when we look at the suffering in the world, if it just makes us suffer more, we're not really in a position to help very much. We need to have a certain solidity and strength in order to be able to help. With the Sangha, to find a concrete way to help. So I have to recognize It's true that cows suffer and that human beings cause them to suffer. But that doesn't mean to say that a cow cannot have a certain amount of happiness in the present moment, and also that I cannot recognize the happiness the cow is having in the present moment. So this morning I did a little bit better. I walked past the cows. It was quite early. The sun was just getting up, and they have a little sheltered place where they can lie down and sleep at night. And they were still sleeping. And but when I came past, they began to wake up. And there were 6 cows. They were all sleeping next to each other. They looked quite happy. They have a nice shelter to sleep under, so they didn't have to get wet with the dew. They had their own companionship, being with each other, their sisterhood. Like our sister all sleep in the same room. And then they stood up and each of them urinated in the place they were standing. So also I thought that is happy for the cow, they're able to urinate. We know that when we can urinate, we feel better than before we urinated. So urinating is a happy moment. And then they mindfully walk off, I consider mindfully, slowly, found the best grass and started to have their breakfast. So I thought, yeah, in the life of the cow there are present moment, wonderful moment, happy things. So I could share the happy moment with them. But I also know there is the suffering. And the Buddha taught that. He taught the suffering and the end of suffering. So aware of the suffering caused by the destruction of life, I am determined to learn ways to protect life. That is the first sentence of the 5 mindfulness trainings. It is about right action that we can take as human beings, the path out of suffering, right view, right mindfulness, right action. So what can I do in my daily life to make the life of a cow have a better future, the cow have a better future? That is for you to discover. That is not something that I want to tell you, because the 5 mindfulness trainings are not doctrines. They are dogma that we have to follow. They are to deepen our awareness, to know better, to learn ways to protect life. So that is what we meditate on. How are we going to live differently so that we can protect the life of animals more? And that is the end of suffering. So if there is suffering, there has to be a way to end the suffering. And the suffering is the way of the Noble Eightfold Path. Above all, right view. And right view begins with conditioned genesis. Another word, an easier word for you to use is interbeing. This is because that is. We suffer a lot because of the word being. Because the word being has its opposite, which is non-being. And we think that when someone dies, they are non-being. Before they were being. And after they die, they are non-being. So being and non-being, they cause us to suffer a lot. And so the Buddha gave a way out is the way of interbeing. And in our daily life, we can have the joy of looking deeply, meditating, to recognize interbeing. The last century was century of individualism. The 20th century, maybe the 19th century also, where everybody wanted to find their own way of doing better than others. And still, that individualism is not finished. Even in the 21st century, it's still there. We still compete. We compete for promotion. We compete for finding a position in a job. We compete in school to get a higher examination mark. We compete in the university. So we're still in the era of individualism, but we can also see that we are coming out of that era into the era of collectiveness. Rather than competing with each other, doing things together. Because we see that my happiness is your happiness, and your happiness is my happiness. One day I saw that very clearly. We were in Greece and the driver of the bus was drinking alcohol and he drove too fast. And I was imagining in my head that we will have a terrible accident. And the first thought that came into my head, if we have an accident, I don't want to be hurt. I want to live. I don't want to die. But then the second thought was, say we had an accident and everyone was hurt except myself. Would I be happy? And I thought, no, there's no way. I would suffer. Being the only one not hurt, I would suffer. So then I could see clearly that my happiness is not an individual matter. My happiness is with your happiness. When I went to India, I made my parents suffer a lot. I want to go and live in a very I was going to say uncivilized, but then I thought it's the wrong word. What do you say, undeveloped? Anyway, a place where there's no electricity, no water, no medical facilities, because I feel this is the happiest place for me to be, out in nature. And my mother suffered so much because she was afraid for my well-being, afraid I would get ill and nobody to look after me. So all the time I was in India, all those months I was there, my mother had suffering. And I was there enjoying myself with no water, no electricity, and I had no idea my mother was suffering. And then one day a monk said to me, when you go back home, you ask your mother, is she happy with what you are doing? So when I went back home, I asked my mother, and I see the tears coming down her face. She said, I can never understand why you gave up a good teaching post in order to go to a place where your life was in danger. Yeah, and I see that all that time how much she had suffered. So I said, okay, I realized my happiness, my mother's happiness is one. So I thought, okay, I'll go back to teaching. And I was happy because my mother was happy. Even though I didn't really want to teach, I wanted to be a nun. So I was lucky. My mother and father, they loved to spend their holidays in France. And so, when I said that I'd become a nun in Plum village tradition, they say, okay, that's fine, no problem. You have water, you have electricity, you have hospital, and we come to France and visit you. Yeah, it's fine. So everything worked out well in the end. So in the second mindfulness training we learned that happiness is not an individual matter. And we also learned that the Sangha is the place where we do things together. The energy of the Sangha is, say we're, I don't know how many people, 500 people. So the energy of the Sangha isn't 500 times 1. 500 times more than my energy on my own. The energy of the Sangha is many, many times more than one individual multiplied by 500. So if we want to do something to change the world, we have to have that collective energy to do it together. And in that Sangha energy, we can let go of our complexes of being better, of being worse, or being just as good as. Everybody has something they can contribute to the Sangha. Some of us are strong, some of us are weak, some of us are tall, some of us are short, but everyone has something that they can contribute. If you are tall, you can reach for something that is high up. If you are short, you can stand in front of other people and not block their view. So everybody has something that they can contribute. And one day when you can't find that something that you can contribute, you should go to other Sangha members and ask them, "Dear Sangha, please tell me, what is it I can contribute?" Is that a reminder? And so that is refuge in the Sangha. Taking refuge in the Sangha is to be in the Sangha, to practice in the Sangha. And practice not looking around to see what other people are practicing. Practice is an island to yourself. And that island of yourself, although it may not look like it, under the ocean is connected to all the other islands. So we are connected. So refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma and the Sangha is something we do in our daily life. Whether we are a Buddhist or not, we practice it each moment of our daily life. And I said that this is the last point, that the 3 refuges, Buddha, Dharma and Sangha, inter-are, so that when you take refuge in the Sangha, you are also taking refuge in the Buddha. And Thai has said, the future Buddha is maybe a Sangha and not an individual. And we also see now that Thai is no longer able to give a Dharma talk, no longer able to lead the walking meditation. But Thai has given birth to a Sangha, and that Sangha is able to be the future Thai.